Napoleon, Napoleon, nipple, 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 Napoleon. Napoleon was born in the Italian island of Corsica in 1769, only a few months after France had annexed the island. He was the son of an Italian lawyer whose family stemmed from the Florentine nobility. Like another Italian father we've heard of, Napoleon's father had connections in France, which enabled Napoleon to study in the French town of Autun, where he learned to speak French and obtained a royal scholarship to study at a military school. During this time, Napoleon changed his name from the Italian Napoleone to the more French-sounding Napoleon. Napoleon's military education eventually led to him becoming a lieutenant in the French army. Due to his extensive study of philosophy and the campaigns of great military leaders of the past, Napoleon quickly rose to the ranks of the French military, and by 1792 he had become a captain. At the age of 25, just 3 years after becoming promoted to the rank of captain, Napoleon was once again promoted to the rank of major general. This made people see him as a hero, and allowed him to meet Josephine, who was 6 years older than him and a widow whose husband fell to the guillotine.
It goes, guillotine!
Soon after his marriage, Napoleon was made commander of the French army in Italy, where he turned a group of ill-disciplined soldiers into an effective fighting force, and in a series of stunning victories defeated the Austrians and dictated peace to them in 1797. In 1797, Napoleon returned to France as a conquering hero and was given command of an army training to invade England. He believed that the French were unready for such an invasion and proposed instead to strike indirectly at Britain by taking Egypt and threatening India, both of which were major sources of wealth for the British. But the British controlled the seas and by 1799 had cut off supplies from Napoleon's army in Egypt. He saw no future and only defeat, and made no hesitation to leave his army behind. And once he returned to Paris, he participated in the coup d'etat that ultimately led to his virtual dictatorship in France. While leading France, Napoleon made a lot of important decisions in the first few years, two of which are that he made peace with the Catholic Church, who was one of the oldest and most implacable enemies of the revolution, and that he set up his Napoleonic Code of laws. The Napoleonic Code kept revolutionary gains intact, such as equality of all men before the law and the abolition of serfdom and slavery. It protected property and individual rights. However, it undid some of the legislation. Women lost several of their newly acquired rights and were treated as minors in court, couldn't acquire a divorce easily, and most of their control over their family was lost. Napoleon also worked on rationalizing the bureaucratic structure of France by developing a powerful centralized administrative machine. During the Revolution, the National Assembly had divided France into 83 departments and replaced the provincial estates, nobles, and intendants with self-governing assemblies. Napoleon kept the departments but eliminated the locally elected assemblies and instituted new officials, most important of which were the prefects, as the central government's agents appointed by the first consul. The prefects were responsible for supervising all aspects of local government, yet they were not local men, and their careers depended on the central government. Under Napoleon, Tax collecting had become systematic and efficient. Taxes were now collected by professional tax collectors employed by the state, who dealt directly with each individual taxpayer. No exemptions due to birth status or special arrangements were granted. In principle, these changes had been introduced in 1789, but not until Napoleon did they actually work. In 1802, the first consul proclaimed a balanced budget. Napoleon's domestic policies both destroyed and preserved the ideals of the Revolution. Although equality was preserved in the Napoleonic Code and careers were open to talent, the creation of a new aristocracy and the strong protection accorded to property rights and the use of conscription for the military make it clear that much equality had been lost. Liberty had been replaced by an initially benevolent despotism that grew increasingly arbitrary. Napoleon shut down 60 of France's 73 newspapers and insisted that all manuscripts be subjected to government scrutiny before they were published. Even the mail was opened by the government police. When Napoleon became consul in 1799, France was at war with the Second European Coalition of Russia, Great Britain, and Austria. Napoleon realized the need for a pause and remarked to a Prussian diplomat that the French Revolution is not finished so long as the scourge of war lasts. In 1803, the war was renewed with Britain, which was soon joined by Austria and Russia in the Third Coalition. At the Battle of Ulm in southern Germany in 1805, Napoleon surrounded the Austrian army, which quickly surrendered. Proceeding eastward from Ulm, Napoleon faced a large Russian army under Tsar Alexander I and some Austrian troops at Austerlitz. The combined Allied forces outnumbered Napoleon's forces, but the Tsar chose poor terrain for the battle, and Napoleon devastated the Allied forces. Austria sued for peace, and Tsar Alexander took his remaining forces back to Russia. At first, Prussia refused to join the Third Coalition, but after Napoleon began to reorganize the German states, Prussia reversed course, acting quickly. Napoleon crushed the Prussian forces in two battles at Jena and Austerlitz in October 1806, then moved to defeat the Russians, who had decided to re-enter the fray in Eylau and Friedland in June of 1807. Napoleon's Grand Army had defeated the continental members of the coalition, giving him the opportunity to create a new European order. Napoleon's Grand Empire was composed of three major parts: the French Empire, a series of dependent states, and allied states. The French Empire, which was the inner core of the Grand Empire, consisted of an enlarged France which extended to the Rhine in the east and included the western half of Italy north of Rome. The dependent states included Spain, the Netherlands, the Kingdom of Italy, the Swiss Republic, the Grand Duchy of Warsaw, and the Confederation of the Rhine, which was a union of all German states except for Austria and Prussia. The Allied states were those who were defeated by Napoleon and forced to join his struggle against Britain. They included Prussia, Austria, and Russia. Although the internal structure of the empire varied outside its inner core, Napoleon considered himself the leader of the whole. In the inner core independent states of Napoleon's Grand Empire, Napoleon tried to destroy the old order. Nobility and clergy everywhere in these states lost their special privileges. He decreed equality of opportunity, with offices open to talent, equality before the law, and religious toleration. This spread of French revolutionary principles was an important factor in the development of liberal traditions in these countries. These reforms have led to historians to view Napoleon as the last of the enlightened absolutists. Great Britain had become a major problem for Napoleon and his Grand Empire. The two major reasons that explain this is the survival of Great Britain's force of nationalism and Britain's sea power. As long as Britain ruled the seas, it was almost invulnerable to military attack. Although Napoleon contemplated an invasion of England, and even collected ships for it, he could not overcome the British Navy's decisive defeat of a combined French-Spanish fleet at Trafalgar in 1805. To go into the further detail about the Battle of Trafalgar, in October 21st, 1805, the British Admiral Lord Horatio Nelson, who led Britain to many important victories over the French, such as when he crushed the French in Egypt at Akubir, had destroyed the combined French and Spanish fleets at the Battle of Trafalgar off the Spanish coast. Nelson died in the battle, but the British lost no ships. Trafalgar ended all French hope of invading Britain and guaranteed British control of the sea. Realizing that he could not invade England due to its naval dominance, Napoleon put into place the Continental System, which prevented British goods from reaching anywhere else and weakened the British economy and thus its ability to wage war. This failed because Allied states refused to cooperate and began to resist the French economic policies, as well as Britain's exploitation of the Mediterranean and Latin American markets. The fall of Napoleon began in 1812 when he decided to invade Russia because of their detection of the Continental System and their ability to challenge it unopposed. Napoleon brought 600,000 men into Russia and expected a quick victory. But the Russians would not stop and battle with the French, knowing that they would lose. They retreated for hundreds of miles, burning their villages and farms so that Napoleon's troops could not receive food or forage. Eventually, the hunger and heat got to Napoleon's troops, and when the Russians did stop the fight, Napoleon lost 30,000 men, and Russians lost 45,000. When the remaining troops got to Moscow, they found the city ablaze, lacking food and supplies. Napoleon abandoned Moscow in late October and made the Great Retreat across Russia in terrible winter conditions. Only 40,000 of the troops managed to straggle back to Poland in January of 1813. This military disaster led to a war of liberation all over Europe, culminating in Napoleon's defeat in 1814. After his devastating defeat in Russia, Napoleon managed to slip back into France and build yet another army to attack the nearest Allied forces stationed in Belgium. At Waterloo on June 18th, Napoleon met a combined force of British and Prussian army under the Duke of Wellington and suffered a bloody defeat. This time, victorious Allies exiled him to St. Helena, a small forsaken island on the South Atlantic. Only Napoleon's memory would continue to haunt French political life. Napoleon died in 1821, and the Bourbon monarchy was restored in France. Thank you for watching our video. Now listen to this excellent piece by a master composer by the name of Cullen Philpott.